What's up, people? This is our next session right here. We have the infamous John Romero right down here. I'm also with Jay Powell from Indie Game Business. And hello.
Hello.
Welcome back to ECGC, John.
Yeah, virtually this time.
Not in Raleigh. So, for the sake of clarification, give us a quick rundown on your career from, the days of publishing games in the backs of magazines, like some of us remember.
Or baggy games.
Yeah, exactly.
Bags.
Or up through, what you're doing today with Romero Games and Brenda.
Jeez. So I'm not talking forever. I basically learned how to program on a computer by going, when I was 11 years old, I went to the local university and went to the computer lab and started teaching myself how to code on the mainframe terminal. 3 years later, we finally got a computer in the house, and then I was basically just coding games constantly, and coded and sold many games, in magazines where people are typing them in and selling them on discs that would eventually get in the stores and all that until 87. And then in 87, I got my first job at Origin Systems. Let's see, I had started my own game company before Origin. I started another company right after Origin called Inside Out, where I did the Might and Magic 2 port from Apple II to Commodore 64. Then I left that company and started another company and briefly put out probably about 3 games. And then I went to Softdisk, then I started in software. And, for 5.5 years, I was there making lots of 28 games, I think, in 5.5 years. And then I left and started Ion Storm. And then after Ion Storm, I started a mobile game publisher called Monkey Stone Games, starting to make mobile games in 2001. And then I went and I worked. I went to Midway, worked on Gauntlet, and then I left there and started an MMO company called Gazillion Entertainment. Worked on an MMO for 5 years, and then I started a social game company called Loot Drop, and we made a bunch of social games. And then my wife and I decided that we were going to move to Ireland. So in 2015, we moved to Ireland, started Romero Games, and we just recently launched Empire of Sin on 5 platforms, which includes the Switch. So
you have a little bit of experience.
Yeah. How many more companies are you going to start? Jeez. How many more studios?
I named 9 companies, but there's a 10th company that is also out there, but not public.
Ooh, top secret stuff.
We've got some questions preceded in here from the attendees, and surprisingly enough, they're going to start with Doom.
Oh, weird.
I know. So
what is Doom exactly, anyways?
Well, there's another John Romero that made Doom. Unfortunately, you guys got the wrong one.
His name's John Romeo, right? Yeah. You guys are wrong.
So, what programs did you use to create the original Doom?
Well, let's see. When we made Doom, it was the first game that we created on Next Step workstations. The Next Step operating system is what OS 10 is on a Mac today. If you use a Mac, it's basically Next Step. So our workstations were really great back then. When you were on a DOS machine, you're in 320 by 200 graphics mode, maybe 240 if you're in mode X. But when you're on a workstation, it was 1024 by 768, which is great because when we're running Doom is just a screen on our screen while we have our code and our debugger running. So we were using we're just using the built-in tools on Next Step to code with. We were using GCC to compile. We're using Super Debugger on Next Step to debug our code. To make levels, I created DoomEd. And so DoomEd was what Tom and I used, and then later Sandy, we used to make levels. There's a whole bunch of other tools that were created to take graphics from Deluxe Paint 2 and put them into a big data format that the game could read, but not to compress it, so players could just mod it and take those graphics and do whatever they wanted with it in the WAD files. So we had a lot of tools, probably almost maybe 10 tools that we were using, because we had to take music and we had to put them together with sound effects. We had to have sound effects in PC speaker and in FM synth and in digital format, and music that was MIDI, all combined into a sound file. So yeah, lots of tools. And then when we were doing a final compilation for things like an alpha or a beta or the final release, we used the Wacom C compiler with all kinds of optimization switches set on, running on DOS. So it was compiled, optimally on an Intel chip. Because the next set machines were all different kinds of chips. There was Power PCs and Motorola 68Ks and Intels. The operating system ran on 3 different architectures. So yeah, that's basically DOS 4GW from Rational Systems was the DOS extender that we used. It was really, I think, the only one back then that everybody used. And that's because DOS was a 16-bit operating system and 32-bit programs were starting to come out, but DOS wasn't 32-bit, so there had to be something that could bridge that gap. And Doom was 32-bit, so Doom would use the 4 megabytes of memory if you had it, or 32 or whatever, and just load all the data up into memory and make it faster. But yeah, that's what we used.
You don't have those kind of restrictions anymore. Only 4 megabytes. Nope. We have to cram it all in there, and 4 megabytes of memory.
So what was your experience porting Doom to the Atari Jaguar? I understand the system has a reputation for unique hardware lacking documentation.
So the tech part of the Jaguar was not a problem. We were really good at doing anything that was technical. We'd been assembly language programmers for 10 years minimum, probably longer than that. So it was no problem getting the data. Like, as an example, when we were making Doom, we had to all of a sudden stop working on Doom because we found out that the person who was supposed to do our Super Nintendo port of Wolfenstein from the PC to SNES didn't do anything, and we needed to do it because we had to fulfill this contract that we'd signed a year earlier. So so we had to hurry because we needed to keep on making Doom. So we had to learn the Super Nintendo hardware, and we had to port the game over, and we had to change things for Japan because of blood and everything. Can't shoot dogs. And it took us 3 weeks to do that. And that's us learning the hardware and everything because we were really fast. So doing the Jaguar port was easy. The technical stuff, it was just like, how do we get 64 bits of speed? Oh, we can't. That's completely internal, and you can't touch it. It's just a marketing number. So it was really 32-bit. And it was easy because it was still C. We were using C. We had a good C compiler, GCC, and we did the port ourselves. We did it internally, and it was done pretty quickly. Maybe maximum of 2 months. I don't even think it was that long.
Wow.
So the next question coming in is, when you were designing Doom, first person was something very few people had ever designed it for at the time. How were you able to create that experience without having an example? What did you pull from? I mean, aside from Wolfenstein.
Yeah, Doom was our 5th FPS. So we had practiced 4 times earlier. The first game was Hover Tank 1. It's not Hover Tank 3D. It's called Hover Tank 1. And that game was our first 3D game, and it wasn't very good. There were no textures. It was slow, all kinds of stuff. But at least we got 3D rendering happening. And we also only took 2 months to make that game. Later in the same year, in 1991, in November, we had finished making Catacomb 3D, and we spent 2 months doing that. And that had texture mapped walls. It was better rendering, and it was a little faster, but it still wasn't very cool because you actually didn't have weapons. You have a hand and you're shooting fireballs, and that's not that cool. So so that was still really important, getting texture mapping. And this was EGA texture mapping, which is actually far harder than VGA texture mapping. We spent 2 months making that game, but even back when we were doing games in 1991, we were making 2 games at once. So we really only had half the time to make Catacomb 3D because the other half was making another game. Because it took us 2 months to make a game, and during that year, we made 11 games or 10 games during 1991.
Wow.
So they were stacked up. So like we were making Keen 4, 5, and 6 while we were making Catacomb 3D.
So
And we're going as fast as we can.
how big was your team at the time?
4. There's 4 of us.
Good God.
Wow.
We were experts when we formed the company. So it was, we were just very fast. We're used to that for years. Like, come up with an idea, immediately set about making the game. There were no prototypes. It was just, you make it. You know what the game is? Make the game. There's no reason to like make a prototype, because if you can see how fun it was, or that you think it's going to be, that's what you're going to code. You're going to make that fun. So that's what we did. And the thing is, those games were not that good because they were only 2 months. But when we were finished with 1991, that was when we all said, okay, we don't have to ship on these stupid deadlines. Let's make something really cool and not worry about the ship date. And so we made Wolfenstein, and that took us 4 months. So we did twice as long. But it was a really good game, and we spent an extra 2 months after that. So it was really a total of 6, but we launched it at 4 months. And after the extra 2 months gave us double the amount of levels, 6 times the levels, and in a hint book. So it was worth it.
All right, so
I remember hint books.
Yeah, I know.
The last Doom question we have from the preceded questions. I've heard Doom that was originally supposed to be. I've heard that Doom was originally supposed to be an Aliens game. Was there anything big that got cut out when the plans changed?
So that's completely false, and I hate when these id history people come out with a video that says that we started with Aliens. Never. What the story about Aliens was, at some point in January or February of '93, we'd already been making the game. We already knew what the game was going to be. It was going to be Doom. It was going to be aliens that were coming. There were aliens, demons from hell coming through a portal on Phobos, and you're a space marine, basically destroying them. The name of the game happened before we even started working on the game. We had a Doom Bible in November of 1992. I mean, we knew what the game was. The Aliens license idea came up in '93, and it lasted for 30 minutes. It was like, oh my God, 20th Century Fox is interested in us doing a game with their license. And it was like, yeah, God, this game is already influenced by aliens and Evil Dead. I mean, it's all kind of made for it. And then we were just like, yeah, you know what? Why would we make their IP more money? Why would we make their IP more valuable instead of making our own IP? Like, I don't want to talk to some film company about what to put in the game. I want to make my own game, like we have been for years. So we just ditched that pretty quickly, that idea. But because it was written about in Masters of Doom, people kind of blow it up to think that the game started that way. That was not novel. That's the novel idea was you're out on a base, and instead of seeing aliens come through a portal, it's demons from hell. That is different.
Why did the demons decide to attack Phobos?
Because that's where the portal was.
Yeah,
the portal was on Phobos.
You heard it from him. And this is inside information for you guys. It was inspired by Evil Dead. Right?
Yeah.
If you don't know what that is, watch Evil Dead and the Evil Dead 2.
Yeah,
Good
Evil
stuff.
Dead 2 is a remake of Evil Dead 1, so just watch 2.
Yeah, and then there's a movie before that called like Into the Forest, I think, that they did right before that.
Sam Raimi?
Sam
Really?
Raimi and Bruce Campbell and all that. Yeah, it was like a 30-minute. Yeah,
nice.
I like that.
I gotta check this out.
All right, you want me to pop up some questions here?
Let's get some from chat.
All right, here we go. So I'm gonna this one right here. Bam! What was the most difficult thing you've had to program?
Well, I would say the thing I had to do that was pretty difficult was in 1988, when I was porting Might and Magic 2 from the Apple II to the Commodore 64. I needed to take these graphics that were on the Apple II, which are in this horrendous format, like it's a nightmare format called double res. And I needed to basically turn that into just pixels and I needed to basically on the Apple II logically replicate the Commodore 64's mixed mode color space, which is 4 by 8 pixels of 3 colors, and 1 is a global color, which is going to be black. So what I needed to do is count up the colors that are in this 4 by 8 section of the Apple II graphics, which any pixel can be any color. There was no limitations. It was just a disgustingly, stored format, and then convert it over to the Commodore version, which is also pretty gross, but worse because you're very limited in colors. And so what I needed to do was count up the colors and get a list of like what was the most prevalent color, and then basically make that block be those colors. And I had to do this in assembly language. So it was pretty gross because I'm having to go between 2 horrendous graphic formats and do this crazy, optimal color algorithm thing, and then convert the whole thing into a Commodore 64 format that I would then write the code for on the 64 to put that stuff up on the screen. And that's what the game uses. But it was pretty complicated because it was an assembly language. Other stuff that I've coded past that was just easier. Using a high level language makes it easy. But when you're in 6502 assembly, it's pretty detailed.
Okay. I just actually sent you, the movie's called Within the Woods, not From the Woods, but I actually just sent you the link to where it is.
Awesome.
So here's another question. It's not about Doom. How do you feel about the modern Doom games?
I think they're great. I really like them.
Are they gory enough or?
Yeah. Hugo's done a really good job taking the what is Doom and what is Doom now? Like Doom now can't be Doom before. There's a lot of changes in hardware. There's a lot of changes in the market, but they basically had to boil down what's the essence of the game and bring that to 2016 when they made the new one. And I loved it. I thought they did a really good job. So I'm just really happy that they did it, because no one would be seeing any more Doom if that was not a good game. And that was like 4 reboots to get to that point. And Bethesda was great in having the perseverance and the patience to see that game through those reboots. It took 7 years.
It took 7 years. Okay, here's another. What advice do you have for students and new developers for managing the scope of projects?
Well, keep it small. That's all I got to say. They're going to get bigger anyway. Like the way games work, if you're doing it right, they are agilely. You create them organically in an agile format. You come up with an idea, keep the idea really small, and as you're building the game based on that idea, the game is going to change no matter what. It's going to become better because you're making it happen. It's like coming to life. And as you're adding things, you make a decision when you add something. It's like, does this add to the core of the game? Is the game better because I came up with this idea? Because if it doesn't, you're wasting your time. So the more that you can scope yourself towards the core, the more you can go like, well, this is exactly what the game's about, and this is what makes it this game. And then at some point you just have to stop. Like, we can't add more stuff. This is a really good feature set. This is really good amount of content. This, people will get it, or it's procedural or whatever. But just keep it small. Don't ever come up with like the giant RPG and all kinds of stuff like that. Just keep everything very small. And then when you've done it enough times small, you'll know how long it takes to make the next bigger thing. So always count on all your earliest games just being garbage and not coming out really well. Your job is to just learn from doing the best you can on them, and just keep on doing it. Just don't stop.
Because there's a lot of people that, I'm a game developer and they never actually finish a game, right? They work on games and start making it, but you got to finish a game.
Yeah, shipping is the hardest thing to do. Starting a game is the easiest thing to do. That's the most fun part. That, and like let's say Pac-Man. Like Pac-Man's core is traversing the maze, running away from the monsters and eating the dots, right? Like that is the core of the game, and you can write that in a night. Like you could just do that in a night, but that's not Pac-Man. Pac-Man is the levels, it's the intermission, it's the scoring system, it's the all of the stuff that makes the sound, like doing a great job on the sound. the feel of it, the personalities, the design, and like that stuff takes time. It doesn't just fall out immediately. It takes time to develop that stuff. You could get the game running in a night, but it's going to take you months before you actually clone Pac-Man for real, just because the amount of code and work it takes to get all those details working. Get ready, blinking, oh, there's little bonus items, peaches and cherries and all that stuff. With the different levels, can you replicate all the levels? Like, do you even know what happens after, raspberries? So it's so much stuff to replicate and just try and ship it. But yeah, don't make another game if you haven't shipped one. You're people that want to hire you want to know if you've shipped stuff. If you haven't shipped stuff, it's going to be really hard.
Right, and also like the increasing difficulty for each level, like how their AI sharpens and stuff.
Yeah, it speeds up.
Go ahead.
I just said they speed up, and then they change their strategies. It's all that stuff.
All that good stuff. Okay, we got another question from the chat. Anna Pennington, if this gets highlighted, Anna just wanted to see your name on the screen. What games have you played recently that you've really enjoyed?
Played a bunch of games. Rainbow Six Siege is really cool. But I've been playing Hitman 2 lately. I know I got to get 3. Love the Hitman series. But the game that I am massively addicted to, love it, play it all the time now, is Ghost Recon Breakpoint. It's just unbelievable. Put it in ultimate graphic settings. I've beaten the game so many times. It's really, really fun. So yeah, it's an open world. It's like an open world. It's an open world, giant open world game. It's like an MMO without all the other people. It's full of characters, and everyone is basically ready to get killed.
Yeah, that's what they're there for, right?
And that's what they're there for. It's not like Wildlands where there's families walking on the side of the road and you can't hurt them, obviously. But in this one, everybody goes down. It's great.
That's funny.
It is. It's unbelievable. It looks like real life. It's so good, and it's so funny listening to the enemies, the stuff that they say. Unbelievable. It's just
you just
so
sneak
great.
up on them and just listen to them talking.
You can fly drones over and listen to them.
Oh wow!
You just go just throw a drone up and listen to all the stuff they talk about. It's great.
It's good entertainment. Okay, yeah. So do you know here from Lord Unkamail? I don't know how to say that. Unkamail. Do you know how hard it is or would be to make a game company right out of college?
Well, I made a game company when I was 13. It's not hard. The first thing you do is you come up with the name of your game company and you start making stuff with copyright, whatever, copyright year, name of the game company. Put that in all your listings and all that kind of stuff at the top in your comments. And then if you want to make that a real company, you can just register. You can do it online. You can just register online in the city, the capital of the state that you're in. And then, you don't even have to have a bank account yet. You can just incorporate and have no charges whatsoever. You don't even have to do taxes until you actually take money in. So you can just come up with the idea, incorporate, and just sit on it, but you have a company. I'm not sure how much money it costs, but it's at the most $500. It's probably cheaper than that.
It's not expensive. I mean, you can do it, especially in the US. You just do it through LegalZoom, and it's ridiculously easy as well.
Really easy. Yeah. I mean, it's nothing to start up a game company.
And then after you do it 10 times, it's pretty easy.
Yeah, then you have lawyers just do it for you.
Right. Then you're making enough money, you can just be like, do this. I want this. I want padam, and then make it appear. The magic of Romero. Just ta-dam. Okay. David Klingler asks, do you accept 1v1 challenges at Quake 1 or Quake 3? Only Quake 2.
Well, only Quake 1, actually, for me. I don't play Quake 3 much. I used to when it came out. I really like Quake 3, but we only played LAN. And in our office, which we haven't been in a year, Quake 1 was played every day at lunch. And on Thursdays, I did tournaments we did a tournament for probably about 3 hours every Thursday. because my lead programmer is one of the best Quake players in Ireland. So so I only accept 1v1s if it's in my office on a LAN, just because Quake's the most fun on a LAN.
So that means you got to fly out there.
Yeah,
right.
Which I've had people fly over from other countries to deathmatch.
Just to do that, huh?
Yeah.
So this touches on one of the rules that I've had in the industry that I actually came up with when I played Quake 3 is you never, ever play a game against the people who made it. That's rule number one. You're not going to win it when Quake
unless you're a pro player, unless you're an eSports type player. Yeah.
I ran out, got Quake 3, got home, had to have been one of the first people online with it, and I am just getting wrecked by somebody. It was Tom Willits. I mean, Tim Willis. Yeah, that's who I found out it was. And that's when I had the rule. It's like, that's it. Even my clients to this day, they're like, "You want to play?" I'm like, "No, I am not playing against you."
No, this used to happen in Dallas where like somebody would come to the office like Ion Storm and they're just like, "So you think you're pretty good?" I'm like, "The best in my office." I'm like, "Well, your office ain't my office. You need to beat him first because I beat him all the time. If you beat him, then I'll play you." And then he plays that guy, and the challenge guy is like negative. When the game's over, he's negative. I'm like, "There's no way I'm playing you."
Wow. Bam. Schooled him before he even got to school him.
We had real challenges in the office all the time.
I bet y'all didn't know Quake had an ELO version. There you go.
It's so fun. I mean, that's why I love deathmatch. It's so fun. You know, it's just crazy.
I suck at that stuff. My reflexes are terrible.
Yeah, you have to practice, obviously, for a long time to get really good. And I actually play Doom 1 and Doom 2 deathmatch professionally because people want me to come to their country and do like an exhibition match. Mm-hmm. And so I do that. I beat everybody that comes in. Kind of like, I don't know if you guys remember Cornelia in Quake. She was a really great player, and for years at the NVIDIA booth or the AMD, whoever it was, if you go to a trade show, she'll basically be there just playing whatever the latest Quake is, jumping around waiting for someone else to come in so she can do an exhibition match and just wipe you up. She's really good.
I remember the year at E3 that they had Thresh, and it was like you won something fantastic if you got one kill on him. And it was just, that's the part.
I don't think I've ever gotten a kill on Thresh. I mean, when he in '96, after he went to QuakeCon in '96, and he came over to my house after QuakeCon, and I had a 5-player deathmatch set up at my house, so all of us jumped in there, and we were all basically trying to kill him. And none of us could kill him, and most of us didn't even get to see him. We just died constantly. That's how good he was. He basically would teleport and throw grenades and hop back in and take off somewhere else, and you're just like running into grenades constantly.
Wow, that does not sound fun. Maybe it was for him, but
it was because we couldn't believe it. It was awesome.
All right, here's a question. You have heard of a Doom 2 mod called Sonic Robo Blast 2. It's gotten large updates over the years and has its own community as well as a spin-off kart game.
I don't think I've heard of that. Yeah, because I don't spend. There's a lot of mods that have been made for Doom 1 and Doom 2 over the years, and some of them have gotten definitely big. But I'm always making new stuff, so it's rare for me to go back and just like scan mods and install mods and play them. Right. Not that they're not worth it; they're always really cool. But I'm so busy every single day making stuff. I usually have about 3 or 4 projects going at once. So playing games is usually like I got to play whatever World of Warcraft, or I got to play something because someone's jumping in there and we're gonna go hang out or something.
You'll have plenty of time when you're old and totally gray, and you can just sit back and I'm gonna play all my. Back when I was your age, we played Doom, right?
There was a guy who was playing a watt a day, I think, and he was posting it, but then that died after like 100 I think 100 days.
Wow.
There's thousands and thousands of them. Like, it's insane how many there are.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jay.
Oh, so how did you settle on game design as a career choice, especially since, back then just picking games as a career choice was looked at like you were crazy. Did you have any apprehensions or goals or dreams before getting into the industry? I'm asking because I'm a little conflicted myself.
I learned how to program because I loved games, and this is in '79. Loved games. I played everything back then, from pinball to electromechanical games to the very first video games, and I loved all of them. And like in 1980 is when it really changed for me, when Pac-Man came out, and it was just unbelievably. It was like Doom. When Doom came out and Pac-Man came out, it just took over the whole world. And for me, it was huge because it was so different than all games that had been out for years. And that, to me, just solidified the fact that like games are pure imagination. Anything that you can think of, you can make it. And that really, like, originally I'm thinking, well, if I decide to be making games, I'm gonna be making a bunch of shoot up the alien kind of stuff. And then Pac-Man comes out and it's like, wow, it can be anything. It can be people. This is fun. Like, and this has nothing to do with shooting anything. This is amazing. So that was really like, for me, it was like, wow, it could, like, it's just your brain, your mind and creativity is the limit. So, and I loved the games that were coming out on the Apple II back then and the other platforms. And it was just more and more were being made. It was like obvious that people are making money. And I think it was 80, maybe it was 84 or 85, maybe 85 when I read Hackers by Stephen Levy. And in Hackers, there's the third segment of the game is called Hardware Hackers. And it was basically about the Apple II industry at the very beginning, which was only a few years prior to this book being published. And in it, there's, they focused a lot on Sierra and Origin. And the Sierra part was like, I remember this one part in the Sierra section where one of the programmers came in for his quarterly check, because games back then were made at home by indies. Like the whole industry was created by indies. Someone would be at home making a game. They send their game to a publisher, which is a few people, and those people can get it out for you. So if you're going to go pick up a check, you just, like, if you're close by, you can just go into the office and just say hi to the guy who owns the place, and he'll give you your check. And back then, when Ken Williams was giving, I think it was David Harris or something, his $360,000 quarterly royalty check. And I'm like, yeah, I think games are what I want to do.
That's like $1 billion in today's money in the industry.
I know, it's $360,000 for a game that he made. I'm like, this does make money, so I'm not going to worry about that. Not that I was worried about how much I would make, but just the fact that you could do it. So my goal back then has and every day has always been, all I want to do is just be able to make games every day. That's it. Like, everything else will follow that. As long as I can just have that as a goal, and I can do that, then I can get better at it, and make better stuff. But yeah, that was there wasn't a decision for me. Like, that's what I had to do. I couldn't decide because it was already set.
And then it's like, okay, let's make a game every 2 months.
Oh, and that was years later, because before then, games were made less than 2 months. Right. So I made games in weeks. The first game I had published, I took 30 minutes to write it.
Oh, wow. And then you got a $230,000 royalty check in the first 3 months.
No, right. my first game was 30 minutes it took to write it, and I got $100 for it. So if I can make $200 an hour,
yeah,
that's great.
Better than around 20% of the games on Steam right now.
Yeah,
so,
that's back in the 80s, so that's like $500, $600 an hour, right?
I made it in 1983, and I sold it in 84. So, yeah, I was in high school.
Yeah, I think I think I was 17 at that time. All right, G Swanee, any unspoken thoughts on the modern game industry? Ooh, that's a deep question. I like it.
Not really. I mean, I think it's great. You know, like the amount of support for everything, the amount of software, the amount of knowledge out there, the access to information, the access to just like there's back when I was starting out, there were hardly any books you could read about learning how to code and to make games. There were almost no books. It was so hard. There was, and you did like have fun finding someone else that even knew how to program around you for miles. So it was really lonely back then, and it was hard to get information, and it was hard to become the best because the only examples you had was on the shelf, and so that was like you had to be that good. And how are you gonna do that? Well, I guess I'll keep on coding because there's no books that can tell me how to do that. Nowadays, you have engines made for you. Like the limitation for people now is just deciding that they want to make a game and spending the time to do it, like to learn. That's it. Like all of the information is out there.
Watch YouTube videos and
yeah. How do I use Unreal? Well, go through the whole course. They have unbelievable amounts of videos and documentation, etc. It's the amount of tools that are out there to make stuff look cool. There's zero excuse. It's so much easier nowadays. That's just now that everyone can make games, it's a lot harder for people to see that you made a good game. So it's discovery. And I mean, just think about discovery back in the days of the only way people will see your game is if it's hanging on a shelf, if it's hanging off of a hook in a store or sitting in a box on a shelf. Like that's your discoverability. So that's only if the publisher cares about what you sent them. It was very hard. You could not release something yourself back then unless you found a BBS, which back then BBSs was such a small number of people that had modems that could use them. So yeah, it was very hard to get games out. Nowadays, you just put games up anytime you want. Just throw it up on Steam, throw it on your own webpage. You know, it's discoverability. Who's going to see it? So that's why you enter your game into every indie contest that there is. And if people nominate your game, you got press. And now you're going to become known. But that's how you do it. Make something good that people will notice.
So what you're saying is there is value in understanding the business and marketing side of the industry.
No, yeah.
Imagine
Absolutely.
That.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you don't have any business, your game doesn't mean anything. Right? No one's going to ever see it.
It could be the best game ever made, but if nobody sees it, nobody's going to play it, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
We are well past the days of a good game sells itself.
Yeah.
Right. So here's a question from White Knuckle, which is a great YouTube name. How do you work when technology keeps evolving where one moment it can be obsolete when it's already out?
Well, then use a technology that will never become obsolete because it's all updated on a constant basis, like Unreal, like Unity. Those things are worked on by giant teams every day for years. So do that. If you're worried about becoming obsolete, use something that will never become obsolete. Done. I've worked with engines that are trying to become obsolete.
On purpose, right? On purposely.
Just because that's how it works, you know. But yeah, it's just, you know, first of all, you don't want to be writing your own engine unless you decide that you want to be an engine programmer, not a game developer. So you're either writing an engine because that's your job that you want to have, or you're making games. If you're making games, go get an engine. Don't waste your time on the technology part of it. Waste your time on design.
Here's the irony. You know, we're talking to John, and Doom was recently released that runs on a pregnancy test.
Yeah.
So, you know, therein we have that. Obviously, there's some sort of technology in there that never goes out of date as well, if they can get it running on God knows anything with a screen at this point.
Yeah. Well, that's because think about it. We made the game portable because we developed it on a workstation that compiled on a DOS box, right? It was a portable design from day one because we used a portable language, which is straight C.
But John, you're talking to the business guy here. The last class I had on programming was Pascal. And
right.
That's I didn't even
that's
do
a portable
well.
language.
Yeah,
that's
well,
you can play it on your refrigerator now. Right?
Yep.
So okay, here we go.
Yeah, well, I'll do this one, and then you can go ahead next, because I know you got some questions burning in your head, Jay. I'm looking to start at my own studio. Any advice you would give to a solo dev with no capital? Also, I'm addicted to Empire of Sin right now. It's a hell of a game.
Cool. Yeah, so the way you start up your own studio is you go, I'm going to start a studio. I'm going to call it blah, 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 blah. And then you start making games, and you do it at night. Because you probably have a job during the day, so you can actually live. That's completely valid. Like, that's how most of my companies started, was in your spare time and all the time that you have that's not doing the full-time work. I mean, I worked on games all the time. So if let's say I'm working at Origin, when I go home, I'm working on other games that I'm publishing through other outlets. So when I'm working at Softdisk, I'm making games when I come home, and I'm selling those games back to Softdisk for different discs. Like it's like nonstop. You need to live games if you're gonna get really good at it. And so you just put everything you can into it. When you have a full-time job, then when you get home, you need to work on your game. You spend as much time on it as you can. Otherwise, it will never happen. And you're just wasting your time trying to get to that dream that you have, which is making games on a full-time basis in your own company. To make it a reality, you've got to spend time. And there's no substitute for that. Absolutely not.
So here we have some. Oh, you're going to pop that one up? Okay. Do you think that going to a university is essential in this profession?
Nope. No, I think it's helpful. It is. John Carmack and I never went to college. We made our own college on the computer by just spending all of our time learning how to code, making games, and shipping games. That was our college. It's great to go to college. They teach you things. If you find the right degree that will teach you things that have to do with game development in some way, like computer science. If you learn how to program in computer science, maybe you'll learn some algorithms. Those are helpful, but a lot of that stuff is already done for you in engines nowadays. But yeah, it's like it depends on what you want to do. But I did not. I did not go to a university. I was already publishing games in high school. Why would I do that?
So what aspect of the industry, if changed for the better, would cause you to look forward to the best times of your life as a game developer?
I'm guessing that the best times of your life as a game developer has to do with the industry changing. I guess studios that don't believe in crunch mode, studios that rescope their games because it takes a long time to make games. You either get more time and money, or you rescope. And as long as that is the equation, then you don't have crunch, and you have people that are helpful. If you don't have a toxic work environment, you have people that are just professional to each other, that don't lash out, that don't say even things that are pissed off at people during work. That's pretty important. And then you have you're still making games and having a good time and working in a place with people that you like. So that is, I guess, the aspect of the industry change for the better would be just like more professional workplaces that aren't toxic and eliminate crunch as much as possible. Not having greedy bosses that are trying to squeeze everybody for everything they got.
So and this crunch culture is something that has always irked me, but I also see it from every aspect of the industry. What you just talked about, with the fact that people are always you always need to be creating games. If you're working in the day at a game company, you need to be making your own games at night.
Yeah.
How does one balance that without getting completely sucked into, well, I'm just going to make games 12 hours a day at XYZ game company, and because I love making games? Where should, especially some of the younger folks that are coming into the industry, how do they temper that?
Well, it's up to the individual, obviously. Like, and this is something that I think Carmack tweeted not that long ago either, is we worked our asses off because we loved what we were doing and we were going to change the world. And you don't change the world by just coasting along. If you just want a 9-to-5 job and have a fun and game industry job, then don't work hard. There's lots of people in the industry like that, that have a family. They can't stay late because they need to get home because they have kids, and that's totally fine. And you want to be in a company that, when you leave, nobody looks at you like, oh my God, they're not putting in the hours. That's just ridiculous. For us, if we spend a lot of time, it's because we're trying to get something done as fast as we can nowadays. And back in the days where we were making multiple games at the same time, it's because we're on fire and we wanted to keep making games and get better as fast as we can. And that's what it took every minute, because what else am I going to do? I'm going to go home and make games. I'm gonna, if I'm not trying to finish some games at work, I'm going to be trying to finish games at home, but I will always be making games. So that's me. That's not like everybody else. So everybody else should be like, well, this is a, there's the cool, like this is a normal schedule for a person that wants to have a balanced life. And then there's the maniac schedule that we were on, because this is what we're doing to change everything. And that's what it takes. And we were driven, we were making games in high school, and when we got out of high school, it was, we already put in far more than 10,000 hours by the time we were out of high school. So, that we were on a mission, and that takes time, that takes hours. If I wanted a job, like just a normal kind of job, and I was lucky enough to get into the game industry, and I needed to, had a family, and I would get off work and all that stuff normally. Like, I've had company full of people that did that, and that was great. We were making a really great game too. And like even Empire of Sin, same thing. Like, everybody is leaves at a normal time, like it's like 6 o'clock or something. They take leave when they have to, lots of vacations, all that stuff. It's all scheduled. Our producer schedules everything, so everybody's getting things done at the right time. It's really, really well run. And I guess you just want to be in a company like that, so you don't have to worry about the fact that you're going to get called in on the weekend.
The other important thing is, back in the day when y'all were doing that, you all were working for yourselves. You
Oh yeah, it's our company. Absolutely. Yeah. And it still is.
All right. So Logan says, I'm going to ask the scary. What are your thoughts on Daikatana nowadays? Anything you want to say about that game? We've got several fans of Daikatana. Somebody else mentions that they've been a low-key fan of that for the last 15 years.
Yeah, it is funny. That game is, that game has such a development nightmare situation happening back when we were making it. Like, the team, basically half of them left in 98, at the end of 98, and then I had to basically restart the game again and clean up the mess. And we were still creating the design. So I had a design at the very beginning, and we were making that design. And it took like a year and a half to get to the point for them to them leave, and then another year and a half to actually ship it. It did some things differently. It had some really bad ideas, that I put in there. The community is so great around Daikatana. Like, there's still deathmatch servers running in Germany right now, like every day. People still love the deathmatch in it because the air control is really great, and it still feels like Quake 1 plus air. Has crazy weapons in it. It's the community has put out this amazing 1.3 patch that fixed all the problems with it, and you can play the story, the single player story, with no sidekicks. So it gets rid of any of the possible AI issues that people had. Even though they fixed a bunch of them, if you don't even want to deal with it, you can just get rid of it and just play it and just experience it as a game from 2000. So I love the fact that there's a ton of fans. I get emails about Daikatana all the time. I never get bad Daikatana emails. I got those back when it was launched, but I have not gotten them in 20 years. It's always people just like, man, this was really underrated. And especially with the patch that's out, people will go like, why were people ripping on this? This is great. Just because the patch really fixed everything. But yeah, so it was an endeavor. It was an interesting project.
The Sidekick AI was one of the things that when it came out it was criticized for, and here we are 15, 20 years later, and we still don't have really good Sidekick AI in games.
Yeah. You know what's really sad about Daikatana is there's just a few things that needed to be fixed for that Sidekick AI to be really, really good. Because if you watch the sidekicks and if you try to play it as someone who wants to work with the sidekicks, like if that becomes your primary, like, let's see what the game's like to pull a sidekick through it, the stuff that they do is really crazy. Like the amount of hopping around and climbing on ledges and crawling through tunnels, and like you're in the tunnel ahead of Superfly and then he comes up behind you and you turn around and you want to go back out, he'll turn around and walk out in front of you so you can leave. Like the amount of AI that's in there is cool. It's just sad that just a few stupid bugs actually pulled it down. But the AI in that game, if you actually pay attention to it, is really, really good. Any accomplishment of mine I feel proudest of, and do you think you could have done that thing today? Well, Doom, definitely. I'm definitely proudest of Doom because the amount of things in Doom that we did for the first time in the industry, I don't know of any games that have done that much at once. And it's funny because one of the things that's not spoken about too much about Doom that is absolutely part of Doom's legacy is speedrunning was started with Doom. Like that was the game that started speedrunning. Even though Wolfenstein had par times, you couldn't actually record and play them back. But when Doom came out, we allowed that ability. Now speedrunning starts. And there are several speedrunning history books out there that will say Doom was the game that started it. The other thing that's really that is a part of Doom's legacy is, and this is for everybody that has a Windows machine, when you are installing DirectX is there because of Doom. DirectX was created because of Doom when it came out. It was made for the Windows 95 version of Doom, but it was made because Microsoft wanted everyone on their platform, and they needed to make it so you could have games like Doom that everybody could program, and it requires an API that programmers could easily use to get games on Windows. So they immediately started making DirectX. So DirectX is because of Doom.
So for someone getting their first job in the industry, would you recommend working for a AAA company or an indie company?
Well, it's funny. If you get a job at a AAA company, then on your resume, you have what looks like a good credit because you worked at a really big company. And that's good to say that you worked at EA or Ubisoft or Activision as a credit. And you can say what you did on it. That is excellent to go to the next place. But I'll tell you that when it comes down to it, working for an indie company will be the most fun job that you can ever have when you're making games. The smaller the team, the more fun it is making games. I've worked with so many teams, 100 people on my MMO every day, down to just a couple of us making a game. And it's always more fun the less people you have.
Hey, wait, hold on. I lost one. I had another good one. So what role has risk taken in the greatest achievements of your career?
Oh, wow. Well, the whole start of everything we did was massive risk. Like, when I got my first job at Origin, the thing what it took for me to get that job was I went to a trade show in San Francisco called Apple Fest in 1987, and I went in there with my discs, and I was going to get a job. And I went into Origin's booth, and I took their game out of their own computer and put mine in and rebooted the machine. And the marketing director came over and was like, "What do you think you're doing?" And I said, "Check it out." And she saw my game on the screen. She's like, "Wow, that is pretty amazing." And I said, "I would love to work for Origin." So she's like, "Can I get your information?" And I got her business card. And it took me at least 2 months of calling them at least once a week so they didn't hate me, to try to get myself to work at Origin. And finally, when I did get the phone call to be part of they were trying to find one programmer to do a port, and I was up against 4 Commodore 64 programmers, and I was an Apple II programmer, and I beat all 4 of those Commodore programmers. And then they flew me to the main office to have an interview with 9 programmers, and it was one of the most fun times ever because there was nothing they could ask me that I didn't know, and we had a really good time talking. And so that was crazy. I had just gotten married. I just got my first full-time job. I moved across the country from California to New Hampshire, and I had a kid, and it was within 4 months of each other all that stuff happened.
Good God.
So that's risk, right? That's risky to do all that stuff, to leave home for the first time and go across the country, not just like somewhere in the same town with your parents, taking a job not knowing if I'm going to get fired or whatever. Like when I got the job at Softdisk, I left Origin after 8 months. That's risky. I left to start a game to start my own company with one other person. So that was risky. I called up to get a job at Softdisk. I called up and I said, "I want to talk to the president." So they got the president on the phone, and I told him my name, and he said he'd heard about me and he wants to hire me right there on the phone. So yeah, there's all kinds of risks. Starting id Software was a big risk. Tom Hall was really afraid of getting sued because we'd made Commander Keen on the company computers, but it was a risk to tell the owner of Softdisk what we did and that we'll make up for it, and we did. So yeah, there's tons of risk all the time. So don't worry about that.
All right, so we got one last question here, and then John's got something. He does have a meeting coming up in about half an hour, so he doesn't have hours upon hours to be doing it. But he is already in the Romero post-session chat. If we have not gotten to your question, and God knows there are a lot of them in here we have not gotten to, there's your opportunity. Now, so I want to end this one on a question from a publisher. We're startup publishers. Any tips for marketing or good sources? And paid is okay.
Geez, startup publishers. I don't do publishing, so I couldn't really tell you. Like what I would do. Like I'm a developer, so I make stuff and I go to publishers, and they're the ones who already have all the connections. They're the ones who already have all the influencers and magazines and journalists and all the stuff lined up. So yeah, it's different, but a publisher has to support developers in a lot of different ways. There's QA, there's back-end services, there's publishing, there's possibly a publishing platform that the game needs to support. There's all the marketing stuff. There's third-party development. Like if you're working with the developers, you need to have people who can manage the development of a game externally. There's a ton of stuff. It just depends on what you're going to do as a publisher. So I can give you tips for how you would build a big publisher, but I don't really know what the plan is, but it also would take a long time.
John, thank you so much for coming on and taking time out of your day and hanging out with us and answering a whole lot of questions. And some of them weren't even about Doom. That was the amazing part too.
Yeah,
so,
that's great.
All right. So John's going to move over to the Discord server. Check it out there. We're going to close this one down and we will be right back. Indy has our next chat queued up, and I've been so focused on this one, I couldn't even tell you who it is right now, but it's going to be good. That's all you need to know. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Have fun.